like to welcome you all. This is the first week of our 3-week seminar series on the arts of Haiti, and we were so lucky to have Edouard Duval-Carrié here with us. Next week, we will continue this seminar series with literary scholar Kayama Glover, and in our third week, we'll have Anthony Boggs, curator and historian. And I hope you'll join us for all 3 of these lectures. So this is part of, all 3 of our speakers are also going to be featured in season 4 of our podcast. Tomorrow is the Problem, which will come out in the fall. You can listen to the first 2 seasons of the podcast. They're already streaming, and our 3rd season on the art of ritual will launch this coming May. All of our events and programming here at ICA with the Art and Research Center are funded by the support of the Knight Foundation. Tonight, I'm especially delighted to welcome Edouard Duval-Carrié, who led this week's 3-day seminars with an amazing cohort of participants, and we're really excited to have him here for his talk. Edouard Duval-Carrié is a multidisciplinary artist and curator from Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and born in Miami, Florida. And based in Miami, Florida. Born and raised in Haiti, Duval-Carrié fled the regime of Papa Doc Duvalier as a teenager and subsequently resided in locales as diverse as Puerto Rico, New York, Montreal, Paris, and Miami. His works that speak to the complexities of the Caribbean and its diaspora have been exhibited in major museums, art institutions, and galleries in Africa, Europe, and the Americas. To name only several recent solo exhibitions, The Art of Embedded Histories in 2019, Decolonizing Refinement 2018 to 2019, Mémoire encastrée, Memory Windows 2018, as an alternative form of historical chronicling, Duval-Carrié's work critically explores social and historical aspects of Haitian politics and culture. His rich symbolic language draws heavily on magical realism or the marvelous real, and often includes voodoo gods or loas and their related iconographies, combined with aspects of classical mythology, historical narratives connected to the Haitian Revolution and its aftermaths, as well as related mythologies surrounding Haitian national heroes like Toussaint Louverture. In 2018, Duval-Carrié was the inaugural recipient of the Elise Michael Richards Award, which is given to a Miami-based artist who has cultivated an original practice over a long period of time. Most recently, Duval-Carrié's works were also shown at the 15th edition of Documenta, a prestigious international exhibition held in Germany. I want to thank Edouard for leading these seminars this week, and to our participants, and I'd like you all to join me in welcoming him to give his talk tonight. And we'll follow the talk with a Q&A, so hold on to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all being here. I thought it would be a continuation of my seminars, where I had like a few dozen, participants, but I thought I would be redundant tonight, but I guess I will not be. We have new faces here. I'm delighted. Yes, I've been talking about Haiti, which is where I come from, born there, raised there. We had to move, my parents and I, because of the situation, political situation, which unfortunately has not ended. In retrospect, when I left probably 30 years ago to attend, I was invited by the French government to celebrate the bicentennial of their, revolution, which of course was instrumental in propelling our own revolution in Haiti. So it was a way for me to really understand, because in Haiti, the educational curses really has like 2 paragraphs about what happened prior to the Haitian Revolution. And so we have absolutely no idea of where we stand and what it was all about. And it took me going to France to figure it out, and literally realize that 300 years of communal living with the French did leave its mark, and I really noticed it, like on the first day I arrived, it was, yes, I speak French, then I'm a Francophone, they like that, but at the same time, I kept on looking at them, and they were looking at me as well, because whenever I opened my mouth, they thought that I spoke like somebody from the 17th century. And it was indeed the case, because, the language, the French we speak in Haiti is a bit antiquated. It's not that it's antiquated. It's like we are left in the 17th century with the modes and laws of the time. And when I reached Paris, I thought I spoke perfect French, but they looked at me and they would like smile and they said, "Where did you get that one?" We read that in a book sometime, long ago. Anyways. It was an interesting experience, but I will tell you, here I'm supposed to be telling you all about my life and my did it turn off again? Okay, there it is. My parents left, I was quite young, I was probably 9 years old, and we went off to Puerto Rico. Usually the trajectory of Haitians emigrating is usually to major cities like New York or elsewhere in the continental USA. But my parents had better ideas, and we moved to a very sedate and very quiet little island called Puerto Rico, and I went to school there for probably 4 or 5 years. I am completely Caribbean in the sense that I speak French, I speak Spanish, and I speak Creole and English. Puerto Rico is a free state but associated. I've never understood that one. But it's still, like a vigilant kind of a political system that's going on there still. It's a lovely place, lovely people, and kept many friends from there. And I speak, again, my Spanish is very Puerto Rican Spanish, so don't ask me to start here with that one. First, my first work of art, one of the first that was presented when I finished my university in Canada. I had prepared an exhibit because I was very keen on presenting my work, not in Canada, not anywhere else, but Port-au-Prince, at the Centre d'Art. I have to say that Francine Murat is the aunt of one of my best buddies, and I knew her since I'm a child, and I used to frequent that place, and I loved it, and I really, truly was marked by that place because I knew the whole first generation. They were on the last legs, to tell you frankly, but lovely people, and met all of them, except, unfortunately, Hector Hippolyte, who had passed away. He was quite a legend by the time I arrived on the scene, but his memory was quite interesting. So I knew them and really was very much enthralled with what they had produced and what they were doing, and I think I'm marked by that particular generation of artists. The ones that followed were not very, at least interesting to me at the time, and they felt that I was not being, how would I say it, supportive of their efforts because they had broken away from the Centre d'Art. There was a whole group of artists that decided that the Centre d'Art was too staid, too old-fashioned, etc., and that they had created that gallery Brochette. I did do my first exhibit in Haiti at that gallery, out of just being cooperative and supportive, etc. But evidently, I immigrated very quickly to the Centre d'Art, which was much more welcoming and much more less problematic than this new generation, this then generation of artists. I'm talking as if it was yesterday, but it's a while back, to tell you frankly. Anyways, for my first exhibit, I was in Canada, and I returned with a group of work, and this was one of them. And I was truly enthralled with the idea of trying to figure out what voodoo was. Yes, everybody thinks, yes, no, it's not everybody. We claim that we are 99% voodoo, 99% Catholic. So, I think I was in that camp of the 99% Catholic, and I had to learn my way through the voodoo religion. I mean, the whole concept of it. This was presented in my first exhibit, and for me, I mean, I was very a bit shy, maybe. I mean, I don't even remember how old I was. Anyways, I presented my show. I had it all prepared. There were very large paintings. Everybody was like, what kind of thing is this? And there were a lot of political paintings in it, and two of them had been censored. There was a portrait of Jean-Claude Duvalier in drag, and so was the whole military regime in their headquarters. I mean, you know, like eating a cake in the shape of Haiti. So, I mean, Francine allowed me to put it if I put like a cellophane veil over the cake, which I did, you know. I mean, I didn't want to. She says, you know, you and I, we're going to end up in jail. You know that? And I said, no, Francine, we are not. It's art. She says, you have no idea where you are. Anyways, I did present it, and the first person that was there was the emissary of the military and the Haitian government. I didn't know him, so he presented himself. I'm Mr. Biambi. I'll never forget when he said that. And I said, yes. And he says, I am here representing the government of Haiti. I said, well, welcome to my exhibit. I hope you like it. And I just ran to the other side of the room and never spoke to him ever again. He never said anything about it. I mean, I guess they must have either approved or said that it was innocent enough, you know, because I played the innocent one, you know, but the discussion was being there. They were eating Haiti as a cake. So I don't have that particular picture here. It's so old. I mean, this morning, I mean, and yesterday, we were like really scrounging to find all these images because this is like literally 30, 35 years ago. So I'm sorry if I'm not that organized, you know. Like, I live in the moment, not, you know, like in the past. I don't remember why I did that one. So it's called effigie. But it looks like, you know, like the case of a Haitian, you know, like a standard Haitian, and that's how he feels, you know, like as being, you know, like impaled on a daily basis. Anyways. Then I was invited, I was saying, to France early on in my career, and I was selected to present and organize and really present. And when I realized what I had done, it was really the first time the French were really being confronted by a colonial agent, they would say, you know, like, vous êtes un agent, n'est-ce pas? I said, no, I'm no agent of nothing, you know. Anyways, they wanted me to discuss something they had never done. It was the cooperation. I mean, they felt that 200 years or 300 years of separation could have, like tamisé, erased the heartfelt, misgivings that they had towards Haiti and ours. So literally, I had to ask them to give me access to all the archives that they had concerning, their prized colony, which was Saint-Domingue. Saint-Domingue was the crown jewel of France, and literally, when you go to France and you visit famous places such as Versailles, Le Palais Royal, and all of these things were built on Haitian sugar, well, on Saint-Domingue's sugar. These details are never really explained and given, a full light. And here I was, trying to figure out myself what had happened during those 300 years since I literally, very shortly after the discovery. The case of Haiti is very peculiar as well, because it was, they found gold there. And it was not really gold, it was something called guanin. And the guanin is like some sort of gold. Anyways, what it is, it's shiny. And the Spaniards who were there said, we hit the jackpot when they hit Haiti. And they stayed there and established themselves. And by the time the fall of the Mexico, Tenochtitlan, There were probably maybe 30 or 40,000 Spaniards on the island, which had managed, in a question of 20, 30 years, to exterminate the much larger population of Tainos and Arawaks. And the island was big enough for it to have several kingdoms in it. And there were 5 of them. And they estimate today that the population was probably 2 million or 3 million on the island. Columbus went on his first voyage and established his, and he was accompanied by a young friar named Bartolomé de las Casas. Bartolomé de las Casas went there and documented. He went along with another one, which had a really quite a famous relation called Fray Roman Panet. And Roman Panet is the one that at least in our island, we are indebted for him because he tells us the story of Anacaona and her brother. And but Bartolomé de las Casas returned to Spain and stayed, and he only went back to the island probably on the 3rd voyage of Columbus, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not a real historian, but I mean, I kind of like these stories because they are very entertaining and people don't really know them. And Bartolomé de las Casas was scandalized when he returned because, I mean, they had truly massacred. I don't think it was. It was first contact, so the diseases were like that were brought by the Europeans were quite severe. And these people were quite fragile because, I mean, the whole account of these Indians that they were like very delicate. They would just like bask in the sun and wash their hair day in and day out. I mean, i.e. they were like living the paradise life that we think we can live here in Florida these days. But them, they were like truly doing the real thing. Anyways, they were committing mass suicides because they were like truly after the gold, and they were like having these people work day in and day out. Anyways, by the time 20 years later, I mean, the population had been reduced to really nothing. And he wrote a scathing letter to the Queen of Spain, to Isabella, whatever her name was, to the Pope, who sent him packing, you know. But this is the time of the Reformation, and the Lutherans north relished this little, you know, like letter that he wrote and turned it into a pamphlet. And this is the first account of the Americas that we have, and it is happening literally not only in the island of Hispaniola, but on the side of Haiti. So, you know, like this particular story, I mean, touches Haiti very closely. Dominican Republic has the same kind of stories, but they've edulcorated, they've sweetened it. But, you know, like on the Haitian side, it is a much more, you know, like poignant kind of history. And and this pamphlet was taken up by the Lutherans, who were like, of course, anti-pope and et cetera, et cetera. And they made a how would I say it? Ils en ont fait un plat. They made a complete, you know, like production out of it. They found this artist in the middle of Belgium who had never left probably the front door of his house, and had him, you know, like illustrating this very, it's like a political pamphlet, literally, and it's called The Destruction of the Indies. I mean, what a name for it. And literally, it was an account of the atrocities of the Spaniards, and concerning, you know, like their actions in Saint-Domingue, in Hispaniola, and really the horror that was created there. The pamphlet circulated seriously. I mean, it was all over Europe, and the illustrations were quite sordid. I mean, you have to see it to believe it. I was privy because of this gentleman in Paris. I mean, was very curious as to what I was going to be producing during my stay there. So he showed up, and he, by the way, was probably the only one that was collecting everything concerning the New World, from the discovery to the Haitian Revolution, i.e. the Ancien Régime. So he was totally not interested in Haiti per se, but he was interested in anything that pertained to that period, which I was completely ignorant of. Anyways, he just brought that pamphlet and he just left it in my studio. So I had it for 2 years until one day he showed up. I said, I think you should return my pamphlet. I thought you gave it to me. I mean, he says, absolutely not. If you know how rare these things were, I mean, just give it back. Anyways, I had it folded and it was, I mean, I kept it, I mean, and I consulted it very, very seriously. Anyways, it comes back up a bit later. Anyways, the history of Haiti is very complicated because the day that the Spaniards on the island figured out that Tenochtitlan, you know, like the famed gold city of Mexico, collapsed, they just packed up and left. There was nobody left except half-dead Indians, I mean, Arawaks and Tainos, and chicken, cows, and everything that multiplicated themselves to infinity because the island is very rich. And they were just roaming around until pirates and such people that they call them today buccaneers, because buccaneers is like boucan. It's not I mean, when I read buccaneers in English, it doesn't have the same meaning as the French meaning. Boucan is like these people were like drying meat and selling it to boats passing by. So, you know, like, so most of these buccaneers somehow were French. And they started, you know, like populating the island and asking others to come, to the point that at one point they asked the King of France to discuss it with their, you know, the Spanish king and stuff like that, that this part of the islands, you know, like had to be theirs. Anyways, it happened that the Infanta of Spain, you know, like was marrying the King of France at one point, and she came in with a dowry of half of the island to the French kingdom. So that's why this island is separated in two. And unfortunately, they should have separated it horizontally, but unfortunately they didn't. They separated the wrong way, i.e. Dominican Republic has all the water and we have very little. So that's another compounded problem for, as I always say, poor Haiti. Anyways, the island became French and they really went berserk over it because the French went into this colonial idea, the new world. They came in very late in the game. So they managed to garner, you know, like Canada, which is like probably the Arctic, and according to anybody's references, and they had these couple of islands, half of an island in the Caribbean and a couple of other more, Martinique and Guadeloupe and a few other little places. So they zeroed in on Haiti and decided to truly, because the King of France at the time, the father of Louis XIV, was very much interested in agriculture. So he had like, in his bedroom, he had sugar plants, he had coffee plants and stuff like that. And he was dreaming of creating an agricultural enclave in the Americas, but the only one he had was Saint-Domingue, half of an island. Anyways, he mustered money, he mustered the bourgeoisie, the nobility, let's say, in France. You know, he forced them to invest in his thing, and they did. And the island became, you know, like in very short time, the biggest producer of sugar ever, and even today. You know, like, I mean, they were producing sugar and other agricultural goods, you know, like, so that France became, you know, like instantly from having no gold, no nothing, become having a very impressive gross national product, which Saint-Domingue, Haiti, played, you know, like at least, I mean, up to 35% of the gross national product was the sugar and other products from the island. So it was interesting to see that how much money and how much effort that they brought to the place. all of this, like people claim that France did their industrial revolution long before the British, but unfortunately, at least the British did it with the, what do you call it, engine, the gin, something like, I don't know, some engine. Meanwhile, the French did it on the back of slaves. To the back of slaves, to the point that they had really calculated obsolescence in the case of the slaves. You were from Africa and you were destined to go to Saint-Domingue, you know that your lifespan would not be more than 4 years. So you can imagine the amount of slaves that they need to import, and the industrial or like the way to do this in a way for it to survive. Anyways, I'm here to tell you my life story, but this part, I garnered it, and I have to tell you, it was very important to me to figure this out, because, when you're in Haiti, really, the genesis of the island, my history book had maybe like 4 pages on the 300 years, and the rest was, like the glory of the Haitian Revolution, and its subsequent problems, that created, which is just as interesting. But those 300, I had no idea. So being in France, permitted me to access, all sorts of archives, and they went to great lengths in permitting me to access all of those, because I was so keen and so demanding. I need to know. What do you want me to do in a year if I don't learn about? Anyways, they did give me access to all of these things, which was very, very nice of them. Anyways, I had to produce for them the idea of, the question was, how did the French Revolution, what was its reaction, what were the reactions in the colonies? Again, they were quite astute. They invited somebody from Senegal, because Senegal had some sort of accord with France, and they had selected an area in Senegal, Saint-Louis du Nord, and Saint-Louis du Nord was like a fief of France. And of course, they followed very closely what was happening in Paris, and they did a rebellion as well, which was not as fulminating as the one in Haiti, but they did have. So we were 3 artists working in France around this, okay, what happened? And the third artist was even more bizarre. He was a Frenchman. He's a lovely guy. He's a great artist. But he was from a place called the Vendée. The Vendée claimed itself. It's a tiny little region in the west of France. And they claimed that they were being mistreated, and they were like worse off than the slaves of Saint-Domingue. So they did a whole lot. They did manifestations back in the time. They took up arms, and one of their noble women, her name is Olympe de Gouges, went to Paris on a mission to create, like an opera to tell the story of not only of her people, which were like worse off than the slaves of Saint-Domingue. Of course, she got her little head cut off, okay, very quickly. So Olympe de Gouges, has disappeared in the annals until literally the last bicentennial, when like somebody mentioned it to us, and we did we had to honor Olympe de Gouges. I didn't personally, but the chap from Vendée did a job, to make her story a bit more well known. So we had the 3 of us to present this whole history, and of course the guy from the Vendée had gone abstract. He was an abstract artist. The chap from Senegal was a Muslim, so no figuration. So the whole brunt of this whole exhibit fell on my shoulders, where at least I could paint people, and I was allowed to do it. I tried the best I could to do the job, and literally had to really take this whole history and put it in in a visual terms. thank God for Dr. Chatillon, who's the man that brought me that pamphlet. He gave me access to his archives, which were much more concise and much more to the point. He told me, I have the 200 images concerning the Haitian Revolution. And I said, only 200? He says, exactly 200. There's not one more. So don't bother looking for any more. So I stopped going to all these archives to check these things out. So he had them there, and he gave me access to his apartment so I could check those things out. And that was very helpful. Anyways, we did our show, and it opened to great acclaim. I mean, it was the first, and I realized by the press that it was the first time that this question was being presented. And really, on the opening, the press really really harped on it, that, finally France accepted it had colonies and that it mistreated them. Okay, that were the papers, that's what they were saying. So, of course, the day of the opening, it was mobbed, what did we do? Said the French, and all the Martinicans and Guadeloupeans were there to support. Yes, we've been mistreated. But I said, but now you're like citizens of France. What are you complaining about? Anyways, it was very interesting in Paris, this whole debacle. Anyway, and I did a whole series of works, and this is the first one. Because in the history, as the French Revolution was occurring, in Haiti, there was how would I say it, repercussions. And the French could not attend their wealthiest colony properly. So what the then governor did, I have to explain to you who that governor was. He was literally 23 years old, or 24, arrived as a mandated by the revolution, the French Revolution, so he was a Jacobin. So he arrives at 24 to Haiti. His name is Légitimé Sontonax. And Légitimé Sontonax, the first thing he did, I don't like this slavery thing, and I don't like these people that are dealing with these people and stuff like that. So he decided to form an army. And he called it l'Armée Indigène de Saint-Domingue. In it, where, of course, he organized it in a certain way that the top tier were the mulattoes, of course, which were closer to them, and somehow, had some sort of, there was this thing in the island called the maréchaussée, and the maréchaussée was there to control the slaves. So it was given to the mixed bloods to take care of that situation. So they were usually on the top tiers, and then they armed, literally he armed the slaves of the northern plain. We're talking about 100,000 people. He gave them arms. Why did he do that? Because the British, in their own ways, let's say, decided, this was, an interesting thing to grab at the moment because France was in disarray, and so that they could just go in and take it over. That particular history has been erased so badly. I had to really look into it to find out 75,000 British soldiers died in this little endeavor, okay? Contrary, the French lost a lot more. But the one who really lost in that debacle were the Haitians. More than 500,000 Haitians died, okay, because they had nothing to fight with except sticks and stones. And two armies, were trying to get the islands and put them back in the field, and they said absolutely not. And they've been paying for this ever since. So I had to explain the whole colonial system, which is very different in the French system than either the Spanish or the British. The French system had what they called the Code Noir, and the Code Noir allowed, okay, which was not permitted either in the British or the Spanish system, they allowed a father or a mother of a mixed blood, children to inherit. Okay, it was legal for a mixed blood to inherit property and wealth. This is almost 150 years before the French Revolution. So, I mean, the thing evolved in a way that, the wealthiest members of the colonial society in Saint-Domingue were not the whites, were mixed bloods. But they never had exactly the same rights as the white people there. So it created a lot of animosity. I mean, a lot of, it was a very complicated situation. And these people had access to education. They would send their kids to Paris. There is a lycée in France, I forget, Louis le Grand, which has since the 17th century, 18th century, been devoted in Paris for the children of the Haitian and Martinican and Guadeloupean bourgeoisie. I mean, because they were pretty wealthy. And the school was established long ago. And I have so many friends that went there that it's not funny, I mean, and they were like being taught, like a French system, but in a slightly separate way. But they did have access to Paris, and we have some luminaries that, that became, very proud French citizen, but also, gems for the, for the government of France. I mean, starting with the Chevalier de Saint-Georges, and who's they're making a film on him, which is going to come out. I mean, he was the one to invite Mozart to Paris to play. I mean, the man was a musician, great renown, I mean, in his time, and today too. I mean, when you hear his music, you're just like, I mean, an Antillean did that, Anyways, his story is a very interesting story, but he's, and then, you have the stories of the name escapes me now. The Three Musketeers, who are the writers? Les Dumas. Les Dumas. Les Dumas are literally from Jérémie, which is a small town in the south of Haiti. Père Dumas was like a famous soldier, hated because he was, first of all, according to the history, very handsome, very big, and very this, very that. I mean, he was like the perfect soldier, the perfect general, et cetera, et cetera. And he was, I mean, at the same school as Bonaparte and stuff like that, and Bonaparte hated him with a passion and tried to erase him from the annals, but sa progéniture, his children, marked, saved him from oblivion, by becoming, France's most beloved and best known authors. During their times, they were like some of the wealthiest people the three, the father, Dumas père, Dumas fils, and there was another Dumas. There were three of them. And they became very wealthy and very respected in France, and the epitome of French literature. Anyways, these guys were from Saint-Domingue, from Haiti. And during the same time, I was not discussing the situation during the colonial. I mean, the exhibit went well, but they allowed me to stay in France, and they said, you stay as long as you want. I said, really? So I overstayed my invitation by probably 8 or 9 years. Got married, had children, and one day I said, you know what? I mean, they're very nice, but I really didn't come. I didn't emigrate to France, and I felt a bit stifled there, and I packed up and came to Miami. Anyways, while I was there also, I felt a bit more free and had to discuss the whole debacle with the Duvaliers and what I had lived in Haiti, et cetera, et cetera. And this is probably one of a few of the works I've done concerning that period in Haiti. So this is Papa Doc, and in the next few weeks we will celebrate Jacques-Stéphane Alexis' 75th year, and his daughter, who was a dear friend of mine, is coming to town, and at the library at the University of Miami, I'm plugging this in, she will be there talking about her father and how brilliant he was. And he was brilliant. So Now she has found new things out, so I feel that this painting is obsolete. And I'm going to grill her on this because she was the one harping that I should be doing this painting, and gave me exactly how he died how she imagined he died in the Fort Dimanche, which is the jail of the Duvaliers, etc. So I did another one. I mean, it was a triptych at the time. I have to go very fast at this because, I mean, my 45 minutes are over. I have 5 to go for the rest of my life. This is like 30 years ago. While I was in France, since I was really, one of my first projects was to give a face to the voodoo gods of Haiti, because I realized that early on that they were simply presented as symbols, because I'm not going to give the history of Veves, but one of my first projects was to give them a face. And for doing so and for being so vocal about it, they invited me to the first Voodoo Cultures Festival taking place in Benin. And that's another story, which is, I have to tell you the story because it's too good to be true. Benin was, prior to this event, at least 40 years under the tutelage of this president. His name was, I forget his first name, but his name was Kérékou. And Kérékou had gone Chinese on everyone, you know. He had decided that the Maoist way was the way, and for 30 years was only dealing with, not even with Soviet Union, he was dealing with I mean, so you go to Cotonou these days, I mean, there are still remnants of pagodas everywhere. I mean, like where the lamps are for traffic, it's a little pagoda. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. And then one day, towards the end of, not the end of his life, one day he just decided that he had it, that he was returning to his village, and that he called the French, the British, the Americans, and he told them, listen, I'm no longer president, bye. And he left literally like that and went back to his village and was, I think the saying was that he was planting yams. He went back to planting yams. So scrounging, of course, the French have a very big presence in West Africa, so they were like, what do we do and what do we do? They found a polytechnician from of the Sorbonne, who was an eminent economist, and they said, do you want to be president of your nation? Because he was from Benin. And he says, well, you know, if you put it like that, yes, I'm going to go. Of course, he landed in Benin, and he got very ill. And these were the days of AIDS and stuff like that. So, of course, he contracted AIDS, blah, 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 blah. I mean, so they shipped him back to Paris, to the Pasteur Institute, and they could not save the poor man. So he returned to do his last days in Cotonou, and somebody suggested, what I have to say is that by then they had erased voodoo in you know, like the seat of voodoo had been, you know, like for the 30 years they had literally erased it. So they found, you know, like, I mean, this character in Ouida, and they asked him to join the bandwagon and see what he could do for this man. Of course, his name was the Dagbo Hunon. That's his title. So the Dagbo Hunon was shipped to, what do you call it, Cotonou, the capital, and he cured Nicéphore Soglo, because he was at the opening of that thing, so I met him. So Nicéphore Soglo was cured by this thing, so of course profusely wanting to thank, you know, like the thing, the Dagbo Hunon, and the Dagbo Hunon said, you know what, I only want one thing. I want all the voodoo world to come back to its source. I mean, you know, they said, what? And they said, who is the voodoo world? Of course, Haiti, but that's not all. I want people like Michael Jackson. He's definitely voodoo. So he had a whole long list of, you know, like individuals that he definitely wanted to have brought back to Benin. And of course, all he got was me and a few others. So I get there, and of course I heard I had heard that story. They explained it to me, and I said, "What do I do?" Prior to that, I mean, in Haiti, I had witnessed very peculiar and something that I had never witnessed before, like a voodoo ceremony in the middle of nowhere. I was going to my house in the countryside, and I'm passing, I see this agglomeration of people, and I said, I better go and check this out. I've never seen this. So I go, and I say, oh, Mambo Nana is shipping, like the voodoo souls back to Guinea. So, I said, what? I've never heard of this one. This lady was on her last leg. She was very old. And she decided that she was going to send all the, all the people that were like really believing in voodoo and stuff like that, she would send them back to Guinea. So I said, how is she doing that? Of course, I go there and I follow everybody going to this thing. She's like this very, very frail and old lady, and she's like a vision in pink gauze, She was sitting on like a baldaquin. I don't know how they say that, in a chair, like that they were carrying around. And she dressed like that, but she had it very well organized. You had to buy a passport to get into this enclosure. So you bought yourself a little passport, and you make sure that you gave it to her, and then she would ship the souls of all the dead voodooisans back to Guinea. I said, this is like incredible. I mean, first of all, the business part of it was outrageous, that she was selling little papers that she claimed were passports to get on the thing. So I'm like there, okay. So I witnessed it, and it was in my head. So when I heard about this thing that, he wanted this whole people to come back to it, I said, I will create a series of antennas, to guide the Haitians, the Haitian flock back to Benin. So I sat down and created all these antennas to put down on the beach at Ouida, because it was on the port of Ouida. And I arrived thinking, this is like the French government inviting me to this thing. There must be a museum. Okay, so it's an installation. I prepared my whole thing as an installation to be put in a museum in Ouida, and this and that. I arrived, they dropped me with my crates. The government of Benin, rented a bus, took me there, and the guy said, I'm not going inside. You are there, they're going to come and get you. And he dropped me in the middle of the highway, with crates, and I'm there, who's going to pick me up? And so I was fuming. Anyways, looked for museums for 2 days. So I called Paris. I said to the guy that had coerced me into this adventure, I said, there is no museum in this town. Do you know that? Oh, did I say there were a museum? I said, yes, you did. There's no such thing. There's not even a semblance of a museum here in this town. He says, well, you'll have to go and visit with this Dagbo Hunan person. He's the chief of this whole affair. To get to visit Dagbo Hunan was like, this is like 30 years ago, and I'm still at it. You should claim me, and I should move on. Anyways, but the story is delayed. I had to beg this gentleman to put my thing. And he looked at them. First of all, when he saw my sculptures, he said, this is no voodoo. This is Christian. It's crosses. And this and this and that. I said, this is so voodoo, you have no idea. And he says, anyways, I thought there was an artist coming and not a priest. Yeah. I said, listen, think whatever you want, but this is going in your temple, okay? Because I have nowhere to put it. So at the end, he asked me 10 times what it was all about. So I told him the whole story of this lady on the other side shipping souls, and that were the antennas so that they would not get lost all over Africa, because it's a big place, et cetera, and that they should find their way. Finally, he accepted, and he made space for me at the entrance of the temple, of his palace temple, and I put my stuff and stuff like that, and everybody that walked in just threw themselves on the floor and took the sand on the ground and just threw it in their face. I said, oh my God. Anyways, as I was leaving, I wanted to get my sculpture back. They just vanished. Okay, he gave me a little diploma saying that I was a high member of the Vodun, whatever clan that he was from. I mean, he was a lovely guy. It was funny, the whole thing. Anyways, my pieces disappeared. So I came back, like forlorn, all of this, and I don't even have a memento of it, a few pictures, et cetera, et cetera. I think I have pictures of it. So that's him sitting there. So, as you can see, he's quite extraordinary looking chap. He always had this top hat that was like 3 times the size it should be. And his consorts. That's me and him. You can see I was dressed for the for the Sahel, because that's where it was. I had painted him. And this is the installation. So, and the best part was that the School of Art in the capital invites me, to talk and stuff like that. And it's all the Beninese artists, that are there. So they start that this is all, like a ploy, and that there's no real art. I mean, this is like a joke. And what is this? What's going on in Ouida? They refuse to participate. I said, you are gravely mistaken, because it's a lot of fun, okay? What's going on there is like nowhere to be seen, nowhere to heard of. And they said, well, the only thing that we've heard that is cool is that the Dagbo Hunan took out his most precious fetishes. I said, what are you talking about? I didn't see those. They said, they are like this, they are like that. They were these. Anyways, I was like floored. The whole trip, I said, was worth it. Anyways, so that's my story. Now I have another 29 years to go. So these are works that I did around that. And of course, my interest in Vodou became more and more complex. And arriving in the United States, I realized that, and this before this whole thing, Black Lives Matter, is that, you think everything in the United States is rosy. But, it took me a while to figure this out, and I've been trying to deal with it in a polite way and interesting way as well. And I've always tried to make sure that it's palatable, that there's a lot more stories than what is really simply there for you to see. So and of course, my devotion to this character, to Saint Louverture, and also always talking about Haiti and trying to figure out, how can I talk about it intelligently? How can I discuss it in a matter, in a way that could be, poignant and respectful without, using the usual tropes concerning the island and making people, excuse me? Oh. Making sure the island, giving a story that's a little bit more complex than what is usually talked about and mentioned generally concerning the island. So all of these stories, always reverberates in my work, and I always try to make it more, really, literally more complex, and try to make sure that it's balanced somehow. Because, of course, Haiti is not a saintly place either. We've had our share of, but there's always redeeming buts, when it concerns Haiti. So, I'm just going to go through. This was part of my exhibit in Paris. So that was my first big altarpiece. I went around Paris for the first 6 months, and I wondered, if the Catholic Church had any respect for the plight of black slaves. Of course, I went through every church in Paris, and not one image of a black in the church, talking about the fact that they had suffered, because, the Catholic Church is all about, the kingdom of what do you call it? Le royaume des cieux appartiendra to the meek. I mean, there's a saying in English, but I don't know how to say it. It will belong to the meek. Nowhere. So I decided, okay, I'm going to create my own altarpiece. So I literally did it as an altarpiece and played with that thing, just in spite of the fact, because there was absolutely no reference by the church in France of what had happened in the colony of Saint-Domingue and their involvement in it, you know. So, and I started creating, I mean, I decided that I will one day create these massive installations, and one day probably they will be in the apse of the first Voodoo cathedral, which it will not happen in my life. Anyways, they're safely guarded in different museums. I'm at least very happy about that. So this was the second installation which I did, which was presented at the PAM, and it was because this, how would I say it? When I first arrived, this is a while back, there was an influx of Haitian coming by boat, which was really astounding. It was, you know, like the press was always harping on it, that, you know, Haitians were coming, and stuff like that. So I said, I said, yes, they are coming, but you know what? They are accompanied by their gods. So I did a whole installation of this migration of spirits, of voodoo deities coming to Florida, i.e., who's coming to dinner next? To your tables in Florida. So, anyways, there they are. And it was during the time of the desert storm, this whole thing. So you have Ogun, the god of war, I mean, being in Iraq, you know, like as a guardian. I mean, like he's like helping the cause over there. There was another one. There is Erzuli, the goddess of love, as in a what do you call it? In a bar, okay, doing her efforts. Anyways, it was quite an elaborate installation and massive. And for the third time, the museum which has it is going to take it out for display in this summer. So I just found out, you know, like 2 weeks ago. And also the whole thing of migration. Anyway, I'm just going to go through. I mean, I don't know if you all know my work, but I mean, this is probably a work that nobody has seen here, and it's called Memory Without History, because it was a private commission. And I found the image today, and I said, my God, I mean, you know, I did this massive thing for this individual, and I'd never had a chance to show it to the public. So I said, let me present that today. So it's like literally the whole history of Haiti, and it's also, you know, like at the time of the earthquake, right at the beginning. So you have Erzuli trying to hold the fort, you know, like holding the earth from below. And the massive migrations, Duvalier. I mean, he makes references to all sorts, but I had never shown this before. I was invited to the Netherlands, to the Africa Museum, and of course I took my gods on, how would I say it, on a trip to Holland. And here they are. It was quite a massive installation. It was quite dramatic. I don't think it was ever shown here, Miami. Then in 2004, the government of Haiti, which was under Aristide, decided to invite me to do something grandiose. So I took I took the military quarters, which had been emptied, and forcefully decided to do an exhibit there, you know, telling the whole history of Haiti. So I could not do the works themselves. So what I did is like take a whole collection of my work, had them printed, and exhibited on the outside of the building. So it told literally, you know, like using my work, told the whole history of Haiti. of course, everybody loved it. But 3 days or 4 days after, the president was deposed. And somehow the militaries got back and were furious and destroyed the work. Thankfully, they were just reproductions. Yes. I jumped a few years there. The Perez Museum invited me to do an exhibit, so I had to scramble again and try to figure out something different to present. And this time I decided to see where I was living. And, the whole Caribbean, including the North Caribbean, which Miami is all about. This whole idea of sea, sun, beaches, where did it come from? And I really did do a bit of research, and I realized that it was that group of artists, like the Hudson School, they were not commissioned by the state, but they were at the time of Monroe, and the Monroe Doctrine advocated that the Americas for Americans, S. But it promptly, that second S on the American was dropped, and it was Americas for the Americans. Anyways, I'm joking here. So these artists, when this doctrine came up, of course, the United States was doing a good job in the sense that they wanted all of these colonies in Latin America to drop off Spain and to drop off whomever, mainly Spain and Portugal. And they were trying to foment, either revolutions or breakaways, and et cetera, et cetera. And everybody in the South said, are you going to consume our coffee, our bananas, our this, our that? And Monroe went like that, So he turned to the investment banks in New York and in Chicago, and asked them, what could they do? And I think it was them that pushed, to do like a real estate revision of the Americas for the benefit of investors. So they sent all of these artists, which came back with full exhibits that were being presented in different, in New York mainly, and Chicago. And these were solo exhibits by these artists. And I didn't know that. I thought they were just doing their research or doing their work. But they really mounted exhibits to present whatever was South, starting from the not totally yet USA, Florida, all the way down to, to the ends of that. Of course, they were all following their idol, which was, Alexander von Humboldt, who had created such a mystique around himself, visiting all of these places in Latin America. So they just wanted to either emulate him or create this vision of the Americas for potential investors in the North. You understand? And it really, it's when I realized, I realized the whole procedure had happened before. When the Spaniards, especially when they went into Mexico, they started creating, all these visions of this new land. And of course, Tenochtitlan, Mexico City, was probably the largest city in the world by then. They managed to present it without one individual around. They made fascinating vistas of Tenochtitlan, of where it was, the lake, the this, the that, and there was not one human being in the pictures. All of the first documents were like that. And the same thing with these characters going down south. And I decided to append this whole thing and really take literally the works that they had done. This is a very famous image by, I think, Frederick Church, called the Jamaica, the Fern. What, Erica, you know that painting. You know the painting. Help me out. Don't remember the name? Anyways, it's a very famous by Church or by one of them. And I upended it and decided to turn this whole very idyllic looking landscapes that were full of color, full of light and stuff like that, into this very specific time, 6 o'clock in the evening, after the rain, the sun is going down, so it's not totally dark. You can still see the shine because I was using glitter glue to paint these things. And so there we have them. And of course, putting some strange characters to make sure that people realize that this landscape has something behind them. There were people behind them. There were plantations. The whole of the Americas, it is really a plantation economy during that period. And I did about 12 or 15 of those, 12 of them, yeah, to be exact. And of course, I ended with the whole, what do you call it, Disney crowd landing somewhere. That's the way it was presented at the PAM. I don't know if you all had seen it, if you're from here, but it was quite an elaborate installation with chandeliers and all, you know, to... I do all sorts of things. It's my time? Yes. I mean, let me see if I have... There's a lot more. A lot more. Oh, this is Documenta, by the way. Let me see if I can. I'm preparing an exhibit for South Africa, for the Johannesburg National Gallery, which I'm still hoping it will happen. But I started in this whole program to present the first Black Republic to the latest Black Republic. So, you know, like that's the purpose of the show. But since they're making me wait so long, because there are issues over there, et cetera, I shipped them to Documenta. And they were presented, of all places, in a church. And that was very cool as well. There it is. Saint Cunegundis, in the middle of Castle. Some projects I've done recently. This is, of all schools, the business school of the University of Miami commissions me to give a history of Florida. You know, because, I said, why? They thought that, a vision from the South would be refreshing. So I did this very large panel for them. And I have another big commission again, but we'll talk about that next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Edouard. What's striking to me in the story that you tell about sending the spirits back to Buddha.
Isn't that too much?
It's interesting. It seems you're doing the same thing in many of your, looking at your installations after, of the spirits migrating on the boats. If you hadn't told that story, I've never thought about it in that frame. But after that story, as I'm looking at the work that you've done in the last 20 years, I see that Uzeli and a number of the Haitian gods and goddesses are all in transit, migrating to the New World. So I think
but you know
that story has in an interesting way, for me at least.
But this professor at in Louisiana, called me a week or two ago, and he said, you know what, you are taking this new world approach to art, you're saying, it's like I'm sending it back to them from, because I've been asked to do a tree in, the first major museum in West Africa, commissions me to do a tree. And when I got there, they were all imbued with the idea that, okay, this guy can do this. And he's the one that should do it because, one, he's from Haiti. And second, he has, it was a whole discourse that I was like, really? And the same thing in South Africa. They want to have, you know, like my vision of the first Black Republic and all of its issues, you know, like for them, because they're having, very similar issues. So, you know, they just want to see what in the 20th century, 21st now, 21st century, you know, like an artist is, you know, like discussing or can discuss and can, present, you know, like in a some sort of decorum, you know, like a vision of that whole American history, you know, without being too, how would I say it? And Haiti is so peculiar. You know, like, and not to abound. To make sure that, you know, like, dignity is always present. So, you know, I don't know if I portray that, but, you know, at least I tried.
I think the influence of that story to me is striking, that maybe you didn't know you were being called to that ceremony to do a certain work.
To tell you, it was long before my African, when I went to Benin.
So having that story and looking, I've been following your work, it makes all of the work resonate very, very differently. So I think it would be worth it to write that. I don't know if you've written that story down anywhere.
No, I'm just telling you because nobody
should.
I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, I'm going to cut it short. It's too long. Thank you. Oh, there is a lady.
Thank you, Edouard. I wondered if you could talk about the color blue.
Oh, my goodness. Did you ask me that? The color blue. Yeah, well, blue is the color of everything. You know, we live in a blue planet. Everything around us is blue, and it's I think it's the most peaceful color. I did an installation at at Fort Lauderdale with kids, and the whole thing is like underwater, and the whole theme is like when you walk into that room, you know, like you feel you're submerged in water, and that was the intent, you know. And blue does it immediately. Yes.
I was really struck by the installation at Documenta and the way in which you're using the glass or reflective surface. Can you talk a little bit about the choice to use that in portraiture, especially those portraits, in addition to the size? Because it was a very body experience, and I felt as if I could enter the work. But were you thinking consciously about that in terms of experience, and what does that material, in a sense, signify for you and your choice to use that reflective blue material in those portraits?
I have to explain that these were engraved on a mirrored plexiglass. And the idea was, I'm going to South Africa, and it's for the first time, the image of this president for me was very important. And it was probably after a discussion with you, because this is the first time you see in the Western world this, the first group of presidents and leaders of Haiti. They are not dressed in African garbs. They are dressed in not even European, Republican garb, in the sense that they are, you know, like, representatives of the people, except, that whole concept. And Haiti was like the first time you saw that. During the Civil War, this is like subsequent. I did the whole stay and working on the Civil War. There was an attempt by the United States, to honor the but it was very brief. So they gave positions, you know, like, and they managed to raise the soldiers, some black soldiers, to certain points of prominence. So you have some images, but really, I had to go to Cranston in Kentucky to the Civil War archives and ask them, did you separate everything? You know, like, do you have anything on the blacks during the Civil War? And they have more than, you know, like 15 to 20,000 images. And you only see, I mean, in all the books on the Civil War, there are 3 or 4 images of blacks towards the back. And, you know, like, I think they should somebody should really go to Cranston and look at these things and do a whole study of that, of how, you know, like, the whole presence of the blacks in the Civil War. And it was, I mean, it's very interesting. And that's I mean, but Haiti was like, I mean, prior to that, you know? And these guys were like totally into that. They're still at my grandmother's house, my great, I mean, and he's dressed just like that with his hat and everything. So, I mean, I never thought it was bizarre until you mentioned it. But the reflective part is that I knew that I'm going to South Africa, and it's you know, like, of course it's Haiti being presented probably for the first time there, and it's official. So I mean, I was trying to make it as, you know, like, as dramatic as possible, and I wanted everybody to see themselves in this as they're looking at these characters, to see their reflections, to see what they are looking, you know, like, to see themselves looking at it. Because, I mean, that's going to take them back. And they're pretty big. They're very large, you know. I mean, I blew them up. I mean, every time I look at all this work, my hands hurts. I think I have arthritis now. Engraving all these things. Anyways, thank you very much. I'm very happy.